Hi everyone, I'm Chris, the creator of Monster Marathon. I hope I don't come across as too sterile when I talk, but I'm a little camera shy for things like this. So I wanted to do a gameplay video and demonstration for you. So, the main two actions that you get on every turn are you roll once for an ability roll, and then after that has completed, right, your random dice roll equals out to what ability you use on the card. They're all numbered. And then after that you get one movement roll. So to start the game off, it's pretty simple and straightforward. It's not the most complex game in that sense, although the game can get a little bit more complex in terms of having to memorize all the turn-based duration effects or when wards and curses are proccing. But that's what a lot of these all-purpose little tokens can be for. You can put them on the board for traps and summons. You can place them on yourself as a ward if you have that ability. You can place a curse on someone else if you have that ability. Little things like that. So, I think it'll be just make the most sense to go in order from left to right here with Typhon starting. And I'm using these little translucent meeples that I like because my actual minis for the game are not full colored printed yet. I gotta wait for the injection molding for that if the Kickstarter is successful. And the tokens in the minis are color coded, so that'll make it easy for people to remember who's controlling what on the board. Okay, so Typhon will start off. So he got his third ability. So that one is a ward that prevents the next negative effect that would affect him. So you would essentially pluck one of these threes and then put that next to your character. So that's a defensive ward. And then he'd roll for a movement. And then he'd go ahead one space. And then Angrboda's turn. So her three, now this is a fun character, because she has essentially access to about 21 abilities. So her third summons Hela out of the deck. And then you'd roll for Hela instead, so she's essentially calling upon her children for help. And then you'd use Hela's three, Listless Assistance, and she can summon these two slow-moving helpers, Ganglad and Gangladi. So you would take these two number threes, and you'd place these summons on the board. And essentially, if another player lands on this space after their next two turns have passed, their next movement roll is cut in half. Or if you land on this space after your next turn has passed, you may ignore negative traps that you land on until your next turn. So, because there's no traps yet on the board, and no one's too far ahead, I'm gonna put these a little bit further along, just in case. Who's a high threat character? Arachne. So we'll plop that over there just in case. And then, we would do a movement roll for Angrboda. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now Grendel's turn. And Howl of Exacted Pain. Target player within 6 spaces of you skips their next movement roll. So that's a pretty straightforward one since he's a beginner character. And because of what I know, Typhon is a very high threat character. So we'd want to proc that ward to get rid of that for him. So normally what you could do as a reminder is you could just essentially give that to that player. But since we already are proccing that ward, it would just essentially auto-remove. So now Typhon's vulnerable for whoever the next player is that could target him, and then Grendel would go. He also got a 4. And Qilin's turn. Qilin is kind of a weird character, very helper-centric. So it doesn't have a lot of aggro, so it's probably a more fun character to play on teams. Harbinger of Ascension. You may allow all players to trade wards with each other. If no players have wards, you may allow all players to give themselves one from their abilities. Then players may trade. Move ahead 2 spaces at the end of your turn. So, how many characters have wards? It seems like in this round, with these showcase characters, it's only the Qilin. And in this case, the Qilin might want to get on Typhon's good side since he's a high threat character. So Typhon will be able to get his ward back, and then Qilin will be able to give a ward to themselves in this case. And which one's better in this case? Ignore the next knockback effect, or ignore the next effect that would skip one of your rolls. I'm going to give the 3 to Qilin, because just in case Typhon betrays that character later on, which is very likely, that'll essentially defend them against a lot of the skipping abilities that Typhon has. And then a movement roll for Qilin. Another 4. Weird. Okay, so Tiamat's go. The Tiamat is a summon-based character, which essentially are like traps, but they cannot be destroyed, and you can only have one of them, so they're usually stronger than a normal trap. And they usually have a fun little flavor text to them. So in this case, first child, I can summon Kurasiku, the Bullman. If another player lands on this space, they move back 2, or I can summon Kalulu, the Fishman. If you land on this space, move ahead 2 more spaces. So she can do some nasty combos later on, so I'm not going to burn this too early, even though I could put it right in front of her for an early boost. She has some stopping based abilities, so I'm going to set this up a bit down the road for myself with the Fishman. And then her movement. Okay, she didn't get much that time. And then Arachne's turn. 3. Timeless Ascension. Place a thread trap. If a player lands on this space, you may increase or decrease their next movement roll by 3. A lot of players ahead of her already. But for the sake of playing catch-up, let's put this right in front of Arachne so she can get an early boost for her next turn. So 5. And then she would go over here. And then what you can use is just put that as a reminder for her, so she'll get +3 to her next movement roll. Another important thing about stopping traps and summons versus landing traps and summons that I should explain is a landing trap can activate no matter how you land on it with any type of movement, but a stopping trap means you have to end on that space with any instance of movement. So if, let's say someone says knock a player back 1 space, that 1 space would be a stopping instance. Or if you just simply stopped on it with the, let's say you rolled a 5 and you moved 5 spaces and you ended on a trap that needed to be stopped on to activate it, that's when it would proc. It's a little bit of a tricky thing to get used to, but once you do, you get the hang of it pretty quickly. So now it would be Typhon's turn again. So his 4th ability, Rend Sinews. Any number of players within 5 spaces of you skip their next movement rolls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So essentially he could be mean and hit everyone here. And that's the thing about Typhon. You have to kind of gauge if you want to make yourself into a high threat target, since his abilities are all very lethal. I found a little beetle. So let's see how that would play out if he was being very high aggro and he essentially just skipped everyone's movement rolls. And that would essentially proc this for Qilin, getting rid of that ward. So Qilin, actually let's keep that as a reminder now, since Qilin would not skip the next movement roll. So everyone else would though. And you can essentially dole out these little tokens to them if you want to remember that. That's another good thing as a beginner if you've just started playing the game. But you can kind of get the hang of memorizing and telling players what they should remember or not once you played a bunch of rounds. And you could even just turn them on their side like this. That's what some of my playtesters tended to start doing once they didn't need the reminder tokens. And then he would go for movement. Ooh. Okay, so he's going to be really far ahead now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then Angrboda. Okay, Child of Rage. Okay, this should be a fun one. So she gets to summon Fenrir and beckon him to help her out this turn. And then you'd roll for Fenrir. So his first ability, enter with a roar, move ahead 2 spaces. If you land adjacent to any players, knock them back 2 spaces. Oh, so that's going to hit only 1 person this turn. So 1, 2, and that would knock this player back 1, 2, Arachne in this case. and she skips her movement roll, so you can just turn that right back on its placement. And then it would go to Grendel. 5. A rage beyond others. Until your next 2 turns have passed, you are immune to effects that would stop you from moving, and if you land adjacent to or past any players, knock them back 1 space. And then it says move ahead 2 spaces, just to help that out, in case you are movement roll skipped, like in this case, so you can at least get something out of it on the turn that it starts. So for this case, it's often helpful to take some reminder tokens for the ones that say it lasts for more than 2 turns, which 3 of his abilities do. So then he would move ahead 1, 2, and that would knock Angrboda back 1 space. And then he's got skipped. And then it would go to Qilin, who can do a movement roll this turn. 3. Graceful steps. Okay, so that's the same ward. So Qilin is going to play a little selfishly at the moment, since it's still early, and give themselves that ward again. And then they can do a movement roll, since they had that ward last turn. And they'd go over here. And that reminder can go back here. And then it would be Tiamat's go. So, because her first ability has 2 options, as a little way to make it easier to remember who's who, let's start being a little bit aggressive to Typhon. And then you could essentially just put a lightning, the flip side of it, to know that this is the second time it's been activated while it's on the board. So this is going to be the Bull Man to try to stall Typhon a little bit. And, okay, so Tiamat's movement roll skipped also. And it would be Arachne's turn. 5. Spider Scorn. Place a web trap. If another player lands on this space, they skip their next movement roll. And if you land on this space, you move a player ahead or back 1 space. Arachne doesn't have any of her combos set up yet for her ultimate. So in this case, because Typhon's been a little too aggressive, and he's in the lead also, Tiamat and Arachne can essentially make a little deal with each other, saying, we're both trap and summon characters, let's gang up on him a little bit to slow him down so we can catch up since we're really far behind. Because those little alliances matter quite a bit in this game. It's even encouraged. You want to essentially barter for people's allegiance, and then potentially betray them later on if you really need to. Okay, yeah, so she got skipped. So this will still persist until it has the potential to activate. So little things like that, where a movement roll skip, an ability roll skip, turn skips, these things will happen the next time around, even if it couldn't activate on that turn. The one thing that's important, though, is you can't stack ability and movement roll skips on top of a player to really gang up on them. You would just be able to skip it once. Although you can get multiple movement rolls and ability rolls for certain abilities. Okay, so then that would go back to Typhon. Ooh, okay, so he got his 4th one again. That's kind of devastating. But can he hit everyone? It's in 5 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in this case, because he is a blast radius character, and all of his things can multi-target, he's a bit strong in that sense, but he does have that limitation of they need to be close by to him, so once people get out of his range, then he becomes a much less threatening character. So in this case, he's going to be playing hyper-aggressive, and he's going to target everyone. He's going to pop that ward again, and he's going to try to get as far ahead as possible, but Tiamat is out of range, so she's safe from that. Okay, so he got a 6. Now, the way this works, he would land on this. That's a landing summon that knocks back 2 spaces. So that's 1 movement for him, but then 1, 2 back, and he's got 5 spaces left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then this you can pluck as a reminder that his next movement roll will be skipped, but he still has that ward, so that protects him that way. And that would go back here. Oh, actually, wait a minute. No. I did that a little bit wrong. He would get the full movement because that summon is the first thing that affected him, so Arachne actually does get the benefit of having skipped his movement roll, which is actually more helpful in this case than those two knockbacks. So that actually works out a little bit better. So then Angrboda would go. Ooh, okay. This is a devastating one. So her ultimate is a Fimbulwinter. All other players have their next movement rolls cut in half, rounded up for their next 2 turns. Players who are Hela, Fenrir, or Jormungand are immune to this effect. Just a little fun little flavor thing that I like. So what you could do, just to make it easy, rather than doling out, 2 6s to everyone, you could just put these 2 right here for her, and she can just essentially use that as a reminder. My thing is still in effect. All of your next movement rolls are cut in half type of deal. And then she got movement roll skipped, and then it would go to Grendel. 2 is Torso Chalice. Target player within 3 spaces of you skips their next ability roll. So that would be 1, 2, 3. Any of these people right here. And let's say, for the sake of Grendel, he doesn't like having his movement rolls cut like that. He would give Angrboda an ability roll skip to not deal with that next turn, in case, it refreshed, or in case she rolled for Jormungand or anything else that would be kind of devastating for him in proximity. And then it would go to Qilin. Walk of Purity. Move ahead 4 spaces, ignoring any negative movement effects from traps. If you land adjacent to any players who have your wards, you may move them adjacent with you. If you land adjacent to any players who stole your wards from you or other players, you may take them for yourself or remove them. This doesn't count as stealing. This is a fairly safe, heavy movement ability. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this one avoided that skip from Typhon. Ooh, okay. Yeah, the Qilin defensively can get ahead quite fast if not focused on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it would be Tiamat's go. Oh, now this is a devastating one. I was hoping this would pop up at some point. So, this is a nasty one. Summon Umu Debrutu, the Violent Storm. If a player lands on this space, you may swap that player's space with another player's space without switching lanes. Only one can exist at a time. That's the same for all her summons. And it has a fun little flavor thing. Also, if you have summoned all of her other children at least once when this ability activates, move ahead 10 spaces. So, just a fun little bonus ultimate activation if you were lucky enough to have gotten every single child out during one round. So since Qilin is in the lead, that'll probably be the best one to do, and because it's a landing one, you can essentially put it here if you wanted to kind of wait a turn, but Tiamat's going to want that instantaneous gratification here. Ooh, nasty. Okay, this is the thing about Tiamat. She can surge ahead way fast if she gets her 6 at the right time, and then also gets a 6 during it, so it would work like this. That's your first movement from that movement roll, and then you would essentially go like this. So without switching lanes, right, I'll just put a reminder here for the moment, just so I can remember where Qilin was. And Qilin would go here, and Tiamat would go here, like so. And then 5 more movements from that movement roll that hasn't fully activated yet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then this was the Fishman, which gives her an extra 2 movement. 6, 7. So Tiamat's already way far ahead just from getting a really good ultimate at the right time when someone else was far ahead. That can be kind of really broken if characters are scattered, but it becomes much less powerful if everyone's in a tight clump, depending on where they are. Characters like that excel when they've gotten left behind, and then they can really screw someone over and just surge ahead. So now she's even outside of Typhon's range for the most part, unless Typhon gets his ultimate, which is one of the strongest knockbacks in the game. So then it would go to Arachne. Oh, okay, this one can be very helpful if done at the right time. So there are 6 players in this match. So she would place 1 tapestry trap per player. If another player stops on this space, they skip their next turn. If you stop on this space, take an extra turn at the end of this one. So what you can do, since it doesn't say you have to put 1 per lane, which some abilities do in this game, we're going to try to guarantee that next turn Arachne can land on that and get an extra turn because she needs to catch up. But her movement roll is still skipped from that last time, but she'll get that extra 3 boost. Oh, actually, yeah, maybe that would not be the most ideal then, because she's going to get a boost anyway. So actually, no matter what she rolls, she actually is probably going to surge beyond that, so you probably would want to do it this way, just in case, since you're guaranteed 3 movement. Yeah, even if you rolled a 1. So that's actually a more strategically advantageous placement because of that 3. But her movement roll is still skipped, so then it would go back to Typhon, whose movement roll is also skipped. Really, he keeps rolling that. So that's the same thing, movement roll skip. If no players are in range and you are in last place, you may move a player ahead or back 1 space. So I added a little bit of a buff to him in a subtle way, just so if he's left too far behind, he can get a little bit out of it. But in this case, since he is an extremely strong character, offense-wise, I didn't want to buff it too much. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Grendel's just out of reach, so he doesn't get to do anything with that ability this turn. And then movement roll skipped, right? And then that would go back to Angrboda, her ability roll is skipped from Grendel, so we don't do that this turn. So we do just movement for her. 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, that was dealt away with that last turn for Grendel. And then it would go to him. Move ahead 2 spaces. If you land on any traps, ignore them and knock them into other lanes. Okay, so there's no traps in front of him. That's probably for the best that Arachne didn't put any in his lane then, because that might have backfired on her. And then his movement. Ooh, that's not that good for him this turn. But his thing is still active, and he landed next to someone, so a little bit of knockback there. And then Qilin would go. 3 again for that, so that's a defensive ward that will be helpful against Typhon if that gets in range again. And then it would be Tiamat, who's probably going to win at this rate, unless Typhon gets his ultimate, which would definitely be ideal in this case. So Tiamat's 3, Lion Child. Summon Uradimu the Mad Lion. If another player lands on this, they move back 3. Or you could summon Ugalu the Lion Man. If you land on this space, move ahead 3 more spaces. So in this case, just because she's already that far ahead, the ideal thing would just to give yourself an instant gratification of extra 3 movement, just so you can keep that going and try to get your lead secured. Okay, so that'll help her out this turn since she got a bad roll. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that would activate immediately. The nasty thing about her, though, if you want to not use your summons immediately, she does have some stopping-based summons, like, which one here? Where is he? Yeah, if you stop on this space, roll twice for your next movement roll, or if another player stops in this space, skip their next turn. Usually the stopping ones are turn skips, since that's one of the most devastating abilities in the game. And then it would go to Arachne, who definitely wants to make use of that extra turn. 4. Oh, okay, so now this is the dirty thing. Arachne can kind of be a dirtbag. She's a really strong character at making upsets in the game, similar to Tiamat. You may place a player adjacent to you. Again, very similar. It doesn't do much if the players are clumped, but Tiamat's lead is now essentially nullified because you can just go like that and be annoying. And she's just right back where she started after that, that whole space swap. Another important thing about landing adjacent, that affects everyone across the entire thing. Just as a little extra detail. And then Arachne's movement roll. Okay, so that's 2 plus 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that would give her an extra turn at the end of this one since she stopped on that. So she would just essentially go again. Okay, she got a 1 for that. Okay, that's the first curse we've seen. So curse another player. If they affect you with a negative effect, you affect them with that effect as well. So Typhon's been a little too aggressive, and that's where you might want to not skip certain people's rolls with Typhon. You might want to only target certain players, because now Arachne's a little annoyed. So she wants to defend herself against that next time. So essentially, if Typhon targets specifically Arachne, it functions similar to a ward, but it's a specific character focus. He has to target her. So that's going to maybe ward him off from wanting to affect her negatively, or he might want to just proc the curse anyway to get rid of it. So it depends on what your aim is and how far ahead you are and what you can kind of manage in a given instance. And now Arachne would get another movement roll. Okay. That's really good, but almost not ideal, because getting a shorter roll to have an extra turn from one of these other masterpiece traps probably would have been better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I didn't want to do a whole game because that might take, an hour with 6 players. Maybe half hour, 45 minutes, depending on what characters you pick. It could go smoother and quicker, but Arachne and Tiamat can kind of make a lot of big upsets happen, even though Tiamat might have won without Arachne in the match. With Arachne here, she can really mess people over, and she can create a lot of nasty combos with her abilities. But I just wanted to give you a general idea of what the gameplay would look like. It is pretty simple in premise. I actually got the idea for this entire game from a dream that I had in, I think it was like February of 2019, where I had a dream I was playing with my favorite monster, Typhon, and a couple other monsters. And this is the game that I was playing in that dream, and I just kept expanding and expanding on it from there. But the general idea of it being a racing game with some knockbacks, a move ahead, some turn and movement and ability skips, those are all the basic premises that I got from the dream, and I wrote it all down when I woke up. And from there, I just kept expanding on it, improving it, playtesting it, buffing characters. The document of changelogs that I have in this game is, I think, well over like 500 pages now. I've constantly been improving and changing it over the course of what feels like, I think, 3.5 years now almost. But I just wanted to give you a general sense of what a gameplay video could look like. If you liked what you see and you think you could have fun with this, please consider checking out my trailer. I have it up on YouTube and Instagram, Facebook, places like that. I'll have that all linked in the description of the video. And I really need as much help as I can get as an unknown creator to make this mythology game a success. Because I spent over 6 to 7 months working with my artists on such amazing compositions, right? They put a lot of work into this, and I want this game to be successful for them as well. Because if people really like this game, and they start loving and enjoying it, and want me to do expansion characters, I have another 150 of them written up already. I would just need to go back to those artists, tell them the compositions. We go through the whole 7 months or so again, and then I'd have that ready for people at that point. But thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed kind of seeing a showcase of what the game can offer. Thanks again. Bye.